Good evening, everyone, and I'll call this meeting of the Community Planning Committee to order. And committee, are there, I'll start first of all with noting that there will be public participation at this meeting, and if you have a matter that you want to raise in relation to the community planning meeting, please do that when public participation is underway, and we'll ask you to keep things to 4 minutes. And so with that, committee, is there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? So Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson, and call the question. All in favor of this agenda? Thank you very much. So next we have no presentations, so public participation for community plan. Go ahead.
Beth Bacon, a chosen resident, and I'm not in favor of extending the hours of the brewery. I speak as the landlord, which I think I am. I don't want a drinking establishment in a municipal building. And I think somehow this operation got in as the thin edge of the wedge, because that's not what we thought we were getting. We thought we were getting the microbrewery with some sampling, and now it's turning into a drinking establishment of all hours. And I'm sorry, I don't like that, and I wish to be recognized as an affected person, because what happens in my village core affects me, and I don't want even to be responsible for the drinking and driving. We'd be having people coming from elsewhere and drinking and driving, and that's not what we want in the old school building, and it's not compatible. It's not compatible with the neighborhood, and that's compatible with the other tenants, and it's not what they applied for as tenants. This is way beyond what we anticipated. So I think the easiest thing to do is not to drag this out and just say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bacon. Anyone else for public participation? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll keep moving on now. Committee, we next come to the adoption of the minutes from the June 12th meeting. So can I have a motion to adopt the minutes, or otherwise a comment? So moved by Councillor Donaldson, the seconder, Mayor Little. Any comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of adoption of the minutes? That's carried. Next we go to receipt of the minutes. So the Bufferland Working Group of June 6, 2023. And I think this was the 3rd or 4th meeting of the Bufferland Working Group. And it's notable because we got down to business in terms of identifying options that we would assess. We did have a meeting just on January 11th where we did work through some of this, and there will be another meeting on the 26th of July. So we are working toward reporting back to council by October. So, hearing no comments, Mayor Lou.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I'm really pleased to see how well this working group has worked, and you really taxed them. They've been doing a lot of work, and they're very serious, and there's some great input. So thanks very much to both of you.
Great. Yeah, Councillor Donaldson is the vice chair of the working group. So, Councillor Crane.
And just to mention, we've heard the new initiative of the Machosin Foundation, the Bilston Corridor Project, and I think that's important context now for the group, and I'm sure people are aware of it, but just to be sure that everybody's mixing and talking about similar things that would be helpful.
I think there is a mix of awareness with that, but it's something to raise at the next meeting for sure. So, thank you. Great. Can I have a motion to adopt? Or to receive these minutes? So, moved by Councillor Donaldson. Councillor. Oh, Mayor Little. Thank you. And I'm betting there's no further discussion, so I'll call the question. Thank you very much. Those are received. The Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee meeting of June 20th, 2023. And I will have more to say about this in my councillor's update, quite a bit more actually. Any comments on the minutes as they stand right now? There's a lot here, and again, I will cover some of this in more detail. But hearing none, if I could Have a motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Councillor Gray and Councillor Epp. Gray to Councillor Gray making the motion, Councillor Epp seconding, and call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay. So next we have two recommendations that have come from PTAS, the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee. And I'll make these motions if I could. So the first is the memorial bench application. That is for Duke Road. I've been to the site. It is, and I'm sorry, I think there's a name for this particular home. It's in front of the big white home, the Gone with the Wind type home with the columns. So it seems like a solid location for a bench. So, and the motion is that Council approve the proposed location for the memorial bench. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. The recommendation is, and I'm going to read it out here, and I'd like a first and a seconder if I could. So that the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee believes that this would be an appropriate memorial bench dedication, and that Fire Chief Dunlop and Public Works are to be informed per the instructions on the application form. Clarity is required as to who follows up on this request, Public Works, and does BC Transit need to be consulted?
Excuse me, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I was just about to turn to you. Yes.
So the recommendation is that that Council approve the proposed location for a memorial bench pending approval by staff and consultation with BC Transit. The excerpt below that was pulled out of the PTAS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your timely intervention. Okay. Can I have a recommendation, or could someone move this or otherwise discuss it? So, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Donaldson has made the motion that Council approve the proposed location for memorial bench pending approval by staff and consultation with BC Transit. Seconded by Councillor Epp. Any discussion?
So this is in front of Shirley Wild's place?
I think so.
Super.
Yeah.
The only comment I have, and BC Transit will talk to it, but I think it's a great idea having a place to sit there and a memorial bench at that. But one of the things that plagues bus riders is the rain. And, at some point we should look at bus shelters too.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thanks very much. And with that, any further discussion? If not, I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, there's also a recommendation to have a look at our Parks Donation Program guidelines. And so if I could have somebody either make this motion or raise any questions you might have about this. The request for the guidelines is to look at both the nature of them, but there's some very specific costs that are put into the guidelines, and the general discussion with PTAS is those should just need to reflect market rate, and they're very specific costs from at least, I think it's 4 to 5 years ago. So, yeah. Any interest in making a motion along this line? Councillor Green.
I'll make a motion that Council refer the Parks Donation Program guidelines to staff and to the Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee for review and updating as to locations and costs for park benches and picnic tables.
So moved by Councillor Gray.
Second.
Second from Councillor Donaldson. Any further discussion?
So I just say I think it's very nice to have these around the community, and I think they're appreciated by people, and it's a nice way to memorialize individuals. I did have a question. Is it a single source contract that we mention here?
There is one individual who was named in this, and again, the relevance of that person in terms of plaques and whatnot is that needs to be looked at again as well. So,
well, there's superb structures, so I much appreciate them.
Great.
Just a comment, the PTAS, Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee, are the ones that do the installation, so they do a lot of work alongside when parks are inserted into the community, so kudos to them for all the work that they do with site preparation and installation at no cost to the municipality except for the materials.
Great point. Councillor Dawes?
Yeah, I just had another question. It's something that has come up before. It wasn't my idea, but I have heard about it in this room and other communities of other ideas for memorials, like planting a tree or something like that. Not that we're out of, I mean, we're talking about finding designated places that could be for benches, and there's lots of options for that. But certainly think something else that might be a little less expensive too for some people.
Yeah.
But I'd like for council at some point in the future to maybe explore that a bit more. But if and to hear what PTASC has to say about that as well. It's a good idea.
Now, I should mention that this has come up with PTASC.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, there was discussion about what could, so there's room for some benches, but not so much within the parks and even the statutory rights of way. So this is a unique opportunity for a bus stop, and there's more opportunities out there. But in terms of benches for the actual parks, we're kind of running out of space. Someone had proposed one for Blaney Park, and there really isn't room for one there, I would surmise. But the other idea of a tree or some type of stand or structure, that might be something to look at. So.
Well, and we do have the two big municipal fields here that it'd be nice to have a bench, different spots.
Okay, good point. I think that's something probably we might take up next year, because yeah, it was discussed very brief. Well, sorry, it was discussed, and there wasn't really an appetite at the time to dig into it, but I think it's something to look at next year. So.
It would be great if you bring it up with the Parks and Trails. They are aware of it, but also, so there is 2 memorial benches at Blaney Trails, so there's no room for another one. But there was the owner of one of the benches wanted to contribute some money for a tree, for a memorial tree. So that would be something that could be within Parks and Trails. And I think that's a great idea. Benches are expensive, but trees are less so.
Yeah. I think it would be good to broaden the conversation a little more. And realistically, I think the time frame is probably next year. But yeah. Okay, hearing no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? Great, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is the staff report on the liquor license request and the request to extend the liquor license hours from Mile Zero Brewery. And we have a report before us from the planner. And thank you very much. I was going to turn to you, Councillor Gray.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Councillor Shukin. So at the last meeting that we held on this topic, the issue of a perceived conflict of interest that I might have on the issue was raised because of my involvement in the Metchosin Community Hall. So as we discussed that night, I sought the advice of a solicitor, and I've reorganized my affairs with the Metchosin Community Hall Society, so I have no conflict of interest addressing issues as a member of council with regard to Mile Zero Brewing. This has been confirmed by our solicitor. Moreover, I do not have a conflict of interest in these matters because of my son's new ownership role with the Metchosin Cafe. This has also been confirmed by our solicitor.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Gray. Okay, and I am going to proceed on that basis then. So, okay, so we have a report before us from the...
So I was just wondering, can you just clarify that? I see some queries in the audience. Just clarify, so you didn't have a conflict of interest, or you did have a conflict of interest, but you've resigned or something. And if you could clarify it for all of us, that'd be great.
I remain as a trustee of the Metchosin Hall, so I'm an owner of the community hall, but I've resigned from the Metchosin Hall Society.
Okay. And another question, if you don't mind, through the chair. Aren't all Metchosin residents owners of that? Wasn't that bequeathed to the people of Metchosin in perpetuity? Or is it specific owners?
The owners of the community hall at the moment are myself and Jim Russell. We're two trustees who hold the hall on behalf of the community.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to proceed on that basis then. So, okay, so again, we have a report from our planner, and again, it addresses the request by Mile Zero Brewing to have their liquor license out, the liquor license hours extended from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. The current license allows for service from, on a Monday to Thursday basis, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., Friday, 2 p.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 11 to 9 p.m., and Sunday, 11 to 8 p.m. So when this was first addressed in May, Council asked for clarification on several matters, and I just want to review this really quickly. So there were several questions that were asked of the planner. So one of the questions was whether rejecting the application ends the entire process. Rejecting the application in terms of how Council might vote, and the answer is yes. So the Liquor and Cannabis Board will not proceed if the municipality has rejected the application. So then we asked about special event liquor licenses. And the key thing in relation to this particular application is that if there is a request to hold a special event within the time frame covered by the liquor license hours, no special event permit is needed if that event stays from 11 to 11. Okay. So, again, we go back to the matter before us now. And so the question is twofold. Do we wish to be directly involved in the community input process regarding this liquor license amendment? If not, are we okay with leaving that process up to the Liquor and Cannabis Board? Or is there a strong enough opposition to the hours request, the extension request, that we want to reject it and stop the process at this stage? So, sorry, there's three elements here. Be directly involved, turn things over to the Liquor and Cannabis Board, or if there's strong enough opposition, reject it outright. So I will open the floor to questions and thoughts from the committee. Thank you, Councillor.
So go ahead. Well, I know we discussed this at length last time, but it was interesting in this report to see the number of places that have the license service hours and liquor licenses and their respective hours, which are all more generous than what so far we have allowed Mile Zero Brewing to do. I think I think that it's been a real asset to the community. When you see people there, there's families there, there's couples there stopping by, and it just has such a nice feel about it. I really believe that we should support them, at least allow them to have something equal to the other places and organizations in the community that have similar, or that with similar hours to what they are requesting.
Thank you, Councillor. Committee, one thing I will draw your attention to is there are three options beginning on page 23 and 24. Again, option one is to provide comment on the application, and gather residents' views. So that's get directly involved in the application. The second option is to opt out of the public input process and turn that over to Liquor and Cannabis, and the third is to reject the application. So I have a comment myself, but if I would like to hear from the rest of the committee. Councillor Donaldson.
Sure. Well, option 3 doesn't work for me at this point in time. I don't want to see it rejected. Having said that, I don't want to see another government agency making a decision either. So I would like to actually move on option 1 so that we still have an ability to participate in this, hear from our residents. We have heard a lot from our residents, and we did a year ago when this came to council I'm not sure why it's come back to us, but I don't want to totally dismiss it. I want to have that open and transparent dialogue with our community. So I would be supporting option 1 if that's where this committee is going towards.
Great. So there is a motion on the table. And we're now looking for a seconder for that motion for further discussion.
Second it.
Councillor and Councillor Donaldson, do any further comments before?
No, I'd like to hear what others have to say,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Councillor, did you any?
I did have something to say, but it's completely flown.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll come back to me at some point tomorrow.
So just going back through option 1, it is provide comment on the application and gather residents' views. So this would also involve mailing a letter directly to property owners within 150 meters and requesting input. It says by June 10th, but we will have to look at that and give fair notification that this is an old report, obviously. And then also, it does involve any additional advertising methods to advise affected residents of this input opportunity. So that could be a notice in the Gazette. I'm wondering if it could also just be a notice on the website as well. So, but any further comments on this, Myrtle?
Well, at the last meeting, I was more interested in option 1, but seeing what the capacity that we have at the municipal hall, I'm more actually in favor of opting out and allowing the local or the liquor control board to do their due diligence and gather input from the community, and that would be their responsibility. It would be on their dime, and they would have to do the advertisements and everything. And so we've got so much on the plate, and we are at maximum with our staff, plus we're down 1 staff member. I'm sort of leaning towards that at the moment. And also I agree that number 3 wasn't on my radar.
Thanks very much. Councillor Gray?
There's not a motion on the table yet, is there?
There is, yeah. It was
Moved
Councillor
by-
Donaldson
Yeah.
made a motion, and then it was seconded by Councillor
And what's the motion?
It is to go with option number 1, as in provide comment on the application, as in the district and council will do that, and then gather residents' views on the impacts of the license amendment.
Right. I fear I'm going to vote against the motion. I favor the mayor's suggestion that we opt out and go with the Liquor Control Board. The reason for that is that the district previously tried option 1 and failed. It's a complicated process, and it's not easy to pull it off. It's close enough to the requirements of the Liquor Board. And I think to be fair to the owners of Mile Zero, it might be nice just to get the job done. And the Liquor Board knows how to do it. They're all set up to do it and all that kind of thing. I've taken a position opposed to, to reject the notion previously, but in fact, when I look this over and thanks for the time that we had to review it again, I see that the existing hours that the previous council approved were actually more restrictive than members of the community had recommended at the time. People had said, hey, we don't want a lounge here, but given that there was going to be a lounge, people said, well, it's reasonable that it be open until 9 o'clock at night. And what I've heard from the proponents in terms of the documents here, and I think spoken several times, was that their interest is to have regular hours that would be open until 9 o'clock at night. That is matching the closure of the village center of the other facilities there. What I heard from the community was the issue of having something going on that didn't, the only thing that we had in the village center was a place to buy alcohol, and that wasn't favored by anybody that I spoke to. So the idea that the closing hours that the proponents are interested in holding match closing the rest of the village center makes sense to me at this point. There's talk about having occasional events like birthday parties that might go a little bit later. I'm assuming those wouldn't be constant, but the idea that they would happen from time to time. I think we've seen the owners are responsible in their running of the facility. I remain concerned, though, and I guess one of my biggest concerns is the liability that the community faces. I don't mean the liability of being hurt in an accident, which is always there, but rather the liability that we carry on the financial side of things. But hearing the notion that the owners are interested in sticking within sort of the hours that I've talked about, that seems reasonable to me. And I guess the only thing that I'd like to pin on my rejection of this particular motion is that I'd be prepared to make a motion to opt out of the comment in order that we get the liquor board to do it if we defeat the motion in the first instance. And then I want to go on to say that I think we really do need to write, listening to what Bev Bacon spoke from the audience, we need to write up a municipal alcohol policy so that we actually have some guidance about what happens with alcohol on the property that we own, the facilities that we own. It's not a particularly onerous task. It's recommended by both the Ministry of Health and the ministry responsible for regulation of alcohol and cannabis in the province, and wildly successful in Ontario, and we have a large number of places, jurisdictions in BC who have these policies in place now, and it helps us address the liability question and provide some guidance to the owners in terms of expectations. So either way, I'll push for a municipal alcohol policy in the end because I think we need one. We don't want to, I think I'm open to having alcohol being served on our properties, but I think it should be done by policy. And if people are interested in pushing it to a liquor board, then that would be great.
Okay, Councillor.
I actually prefer Merlot's succession as well, to take option 2. So in that case, I would vote against this motion if we could continue with the next one.
Okay. No, sounds good. And I'm gonna, I won't support this motion either. I think we've, for 2 reasons, I think we've talked a lot about this, even this latest last year, or early as last year, and I think it would be good in terms of the capacity with the district to turn this over to liquor and cannabis as well. So I'm going to vote against this, but I would be happy to put forward a motion to go with option 2.
Yeah, if through the chair, if I could just say to Councillor Donaldson, did you have any reservations regarding forwarding this to the Liquor Control Board? Was there something outstanding that we should discuss here?
No, I just thought I always like to keep things more local because I value what we do in our community, but I hadn't taken into account that we are down 1 staff. That does definitely make that is logistical for sure, or something to consider. I can definitely withdraw the motion. I mean, the second is already.
It's already on the table, so
yeah,
we'll need to.
So I think we have to go through with the vote.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Any further comments, and we'll call the question.
So the other comment that I have is everybody understands that we will not be able to provide comment as a local government. That is the caveat, and I suspect that's what you were getting at is with, if we go with the option 2, we do not get to comment. So we can't be half in, half out, right? So we won't be able to provide comment. The Liquor Control Board will gather their own public input.
Okay.
I don't know what that would look like, but I trust that they know, and they've done this many times before.
Including the last year when they were soliciting input for the, and we had that big lovely sign up front, so everyone sort of knew what was going on. Okay, so with that, I'll call the question on the motion on the table. So all in favor? None in favor, all opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated, and that was unanimous as well. So could I have a second motion as well from somebody? Councillor.
Okay, I will move option 2, which is to provide, I'm just going to find option 2. Just to opt out of the public input process. That would be no comment from the local government, and therefore the LCRB will be responsible to gather public input.
And a seconder. So Councillor Donaldson has seconded. Now discussion. And thanks very much. You know, the one thing just overall I want to say is I just didn't believe that there was any rationale for an outright rejection. So I think this is the the best way to proceed right now. So, okay, Mary Lou?
Yeah, and thanks for giving us that time to really go back and think about it and ask questions.
Yeah.
And I've been into the brewery 3 times, not to drink, but just to observe. And thanks for that grace.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I'll now call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. That is carried. So, yeah. Next, go to 7B, which is authorization for a non-farm use application to proceed. And as we have heard over the last few weeks, that non-farm use application is for this amazing fire tower that we've had received from the District of Saanich, free of cost. We just have to pay for the transportation and, of course, the installation. So on page 32, we have a number of options. First of which is to authorize the application to proceed to the ALC with a recommendation for approval and associated comments with no comments or recommendations. No comments, recommendation or comments. The second one is do not authorize the application to proceed to the Agricultural Land Commission. I have a hard time thinking that we're not going to proceed with going to the Agricultural Land Commission and requesting the non-farm use. Any further discussion or comment in terms of moving ahead with this issue? Councillor Craig.
Just in terms of the maps, I don't see the location of the tower on the maps itself. So looking at the photograph on page 40, if I turn back to the map, it looks like what we're talking about is immediately behind the on page 35, the upper left-hand corner of the school. And I just wanted to make sure that I got that right. Yep. Yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? I think I'm pretty clear where this is.
The reason I ask is some of it looks like it's got concrete on it already, and so it may not be that the concrete pad is, well, perhaps it all needs to be replaced with a new pad, I don't know. Great.
Okay. So when I look at the options here, thanks for the clarifying where this is going. Now when I look at the options here, I think that what we're looking at is option 1A, again, based on the discussion and the level of interest. And so it's resolved to authorize the application to proceed with a recommendation for approval and associated comments. And again, I think our comments would be along the lines of the small space, the fact that it's near a building, the public good that will come of this, and again, the general opportunity. So, Councillor.
Okay, I move option 1, which is to resolve to authorize the application to proceed to Agricultural Land Commission with the recommendation for approval and any associated comments.
Okay. Second from Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion? No.
Just a point that we would have to pay the $750 application fee as well.
Okay. I'm thinking that I'm just wondering if that's a second motion. I mean, we've got a seconded motion right now, so I think we have to go through it. The approval and then...
No, I think that would be 1A or 1B, 1C.
Yeah. Can I, Ms. Tarnowski, is there anything we need to do special with the application fee in terms of a motion?
No, there is.
Okay. Great. Okay. So, Councillor has moved option 1A. Councillor Donaldson has seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, finally we get to the councillor's update. The Bufferland Working Group, I believe we've now met 4 times, and as I mentioned at the July 11th meeting, we began the interesting work of looking at a range of options, and we generated something in the order of 22, 24 options. And there were some, and again, part of the process is getting 9 people together and putting our heads together, and there's some interesting things that come up. One of the ideas put forward is to consider looking at the north lobe and the south lobe of the buffer differently, whether different levels of conservation, different levels of park use. The committee itself had mixed views on that, but it was an interesting idea that I don't think people fully sort of appreciated before. One of the things that we'll look at for the next meeting is a vision statement that covers what we believe the buffer land could be in the future. And we began to see that that's increasingly important as we begin to hone in on what the options might be. So one of the interesting things that has come up is that there was an observation that the park designation in the land use bylaw is really lacking in terms of what one might consider parkland to be. And so, for example, if you go to option 70, it's section 72 of the land use bylaw, it talks about park and open space, or P3, and this is like the highest parkland designation in the land use bylaw. Talks about the minimum area for subdivision, minimal highway frontage. The permitted uses describe accessory building, civic use, dwelling unit, and then finally there's park, and that's all it says about park use. There's one dwelling unit permitted on it, permitted on a park space, and then it goes on to talk about the front yard, the side yard, and permitted uses. So there's really not much there in terms of what you might expect from especially a community that prides itself on its green space. So one of the ideas, of course, that came out of the public input session is to rezone or consider rezoning the bufferland to park. And I wouldn't doubt if the working group comes back with some recommendations on what a new designation might look like. So, okay.
Councillor Sheehan.
Yeah, please.
Can I just ask about that? I mean, I get the point that the park designation in the land use bylaw is not particularly descriptive, but wouldn't there be an advantage to moving now and zoning this over to park to deal with moving it out of residential opportunities? We've got this pressure from the province at the moment. I feel like the community has spoken already to say they want this to be preserved, i.e. not residential. So I'm just anxious that between now and December, say, we take a lot of time to talk. I'm not complaining, I'm just concerned about a lot of time talking and even devising a new definition of park and all that might involve. Whereas we could move quickly, rezone this, and then at least that piece of property is off the agenda to some degree. Now, the senior level government can always move in and undo that, but maybe it's worth saying it's not my idea, but a few people have talked to me about it saying, my gosh, I'm really worried about this. What about doing something faster? So I'm just asking again, and maybe the buffer group needs to wrestle with it. But I'm trying to say, I get yours, going in looking really careful at the buffer, but if people back out a little bit and look at a bigger picture, maybe they're going to say, let's rezone this now.
Yeah. That's a great point, and it absolutely has crossed my mind, and I suspect it's crossed the mind of others on the committee as well. And the interesting thing is, I suspect it's not a slow process to rezone to park, and I'm trying to think if there's a corresponding OCP change. I think it's worth raising at the next meeting, and even having a further discussion with our planner and our interim CAO as well. But
I'd appreciate that. I mean, just to get a feeling just a bit anxious about it, I would like to move it along. Not that we couldn't then rezone it to a new park designation that we come up with that makes more sense or is better suited and all of that. Just a preemptive move. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's a great comment. So, the next meeting of the buffer group is on Wednesday, July 26th. Everyone's invited to attend. And I just have to say the 9 members of the group have been working with just huge level of professionalism and objectivity and creativity as well. So, great. just the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee met on June 20th, and I'll just review a few highlights. So we had several members, residents from the Albert Head area attend the meeting, and they're interested in looking at not so much rejuvenating, but adding some more energy to the parks and green space within their neighborhood. And they have worked toward doing a residence group, and they invited us on a local tour of the area. So that was Aaron Ronsey and Madeline Hemstad. We met on June 28th, 8 days after the meeting, walked around the area and saw a number of opportunities for some growth and some improvements in the park. And most exciting is that these residents with others seem to be committed for the long term to expanding and enhancing the area. So it's exciting, and we're going to likely hear from these residents in the future with some ideas. So, provided an update on the Weir Beach Trail restoration project. And again, as we've heard a few weeks ago, the repairs are to be aligned with, this is a natural trail, budget of about $15,000, and we'll look at accessing labor from William Head, Public Works, PTASC, and hopefully even the area neighbors as well. So the PTASC has been pretty busy with visiting various sites which are the subject of subdivisions. And there's 3 parcels in particular: Sea Spray Drive, which is 3 lots, Section 40, which is in the Neil Road area, that has promise for some interesting trails and interesting subdivision as well. And then, of course, the Beckingham Road property. So recommendations from PTASC have been filed, and I believe NEASC has also done the same thing. So, and just as mentioned earlier, we have recommended staff look at the park donation program. We're working actively on that memorial bench as well. And one thing I did want to mention, we did hear from a resident at our last meeting about safety concerns with Sea Bluff Trail, and that's coming off the trail just as you head down the treat area. There's a bush basically that hides the exit point or the entrance point, and the resident nearby was concerned that child or somebody might run out. It's a bit of a blind spot. So I've talked to our interim CAO about this, and we'll see about getting some signage put there. So one other thing I should mention, that Ryan Carter, the newly appointed Trails Coordinator, continues to integrate with the group, and he's a great asset to the team. So great. Councillor Donaldson.
Just 2 things. One, I'm thinking it's a typo at the very top of the page where in brackets it says 26 lot amenity zone. I think the last it was 24.
Thank you very much.
And the other thing I wanted to say is I took my own clippers out with me the other day in the lower, well, I always get the lower and upper trail, but the lower trail after I leave the loop in Machosen Park, because there's always branches that smack me in the face. I'm quite high off the ground. So anyways, we did well at doing that, but then once I got into Elmer Man, I was pleasantly surprised that some fairy angels and whatever the trails came by and had already trimmed all the shellels. So I did send a note off to the PTAS chair, who has then since sent it forward. So there's some great stewardship happening out in the trails out there. So very pleased to. I will continue doing the 5 feet and higher that I can reach, but certainly some nice, lots of growth this spring. So the shellels are very, very healthy, as are the ferns in the park. So thank you for your PTAS.
Great. I'll pass it on to them.
And the local neighbors too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Curry, did you? No? Okay. Thank you very much. That is the agenda for community planning.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Anyone second? Mayor Little, and all in favor? Thank you very much. That's the community planning.